The recent tariff announcement by U.S. President Donald Trump has sparked concerns across Africa, with Nigeria and several other nations facing significant trade restrictions, as earlier mentioned. Under the new law, Nigeria goods will now attract a 14% tariff when entering the U.S., a move that could have far-reaching implications for trade, economic growth, and diplomatic relations. Historically, Nigeria has maintained a strong trade relationship with the United States, exporting goods worth $931 billion last year, while importing over 1 trillion naira in American products in 2024. Analysts fear these new tariffs could disrupt this balance, making Nigeria's exports less competitive in the U.S. market and potentially affect businesses, employment, and foreign exchange earnings. In our conversation today, we will look at the rationale behind these tariffs, their potential economic consequences for Nigeria and Africa, and how businesses and policymakers can navigate these challenges. Our guest who joins us from London is Dr. UCHE, visiting fellow Firoz Lajil Institute for Africa, London School of Economics and Political Science, London. Thank you for joining us, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you very
All right.
much.
How is London this afternoon?
Everything is good and bright today.
Great. Let's start by hearing your thoughts on the possible reasons behind Trump's decision to impose tariffs on some African countries.
Well, I think that President Trump has been very clear from day one. He wants to make America great again. So he's looking at every or most of the things he's doing from the lens of what will strengthen America. So that is basically why he's imposing tariffs so that it can grow indigenous American market, market for indigenous American products. So that's essentially what he's doing, and then making it difficult for products from other countries to enter America because by the time he imposes the tariffs, that means the cost of those commodities will be high and probably less competitive than the ones that are indigenously manufactured in America. So that's exactly what I think his focus is on. So it's not ambiguous at all.
Okay. But the tariffs have been imposed on countries that the White House describes as worst offenders in terms of trade practices. Do you think this approach is effective in promoting fair trade, or could it lead to a trade war? It appears we've lost connection with Dr. It appears we've been able to reconnect with Dr. Iwe. Hello, Dr. Iwe, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud
All
and
right.
clear.
Before we lost connection, I was trying to get your thoughts on the fact that the tariffs that have been imposed on countries that the White House describes as worst offenders in terms of trade practices. Do you think this approach is effective in promoting fair trade, or could it lead to a trade war?
Well, I don't know about a trade war because there is power asymmetry, as you know, between a country like Nigeria or a continent like Africa and the United States. But I want us to look at the numbers in terms of implication on Nigeria. Indeed, the trade between US and Nigeria contributes approximately 2% of the country's, Nigeria's GDP. So it's not significant, if you ask me. But what is critical here is that there could be a potential implication on AGOA. If you know the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, the current renewal will last till 20 September 2025, I think. So what it means is that some of these products, that Nigeria exports, things like, as you know, traditionally is about crude oil and a bit of cashew nuts and animal feed and cocoa. Some of those will stagger quite a bit in terms of numbers, but traditionally there has been a lot of deficit. If you look at the numbers in 2024, you tried to allude to them earlier. Um, Trade between US and Nigeria, the exports US into Nigeria is probably about 4.2 billion dollars in 2024. And then the other way, Nigeria to US is about $5.7 billion. Yes, but as you know, a majority of that relationship is about crude oil, and crude oil is something that is internationally competitive. So if the US refuses to buy, other countries, China will buy, for instance. So in terms of how impactful it will be. Yes, it will be impactful, but it's not going to be very radical because the percentage of spread between the US and Nigeria is quite low. And then also, if you look at the tariff, Nigeria is just 14%. Other African countries like Lesotho and others have higher tariffs. So the implication on Nigeria will be there, but it's not going to be that radical because the percentage of trade is not high and the percentage contribution on the GDP is merely 2%. So that's my view.
Okay, it's been reported that Nigeria's exports to the US were worth $6.29 billion dollars in 2023 and $931 billion dollars last year. How do you think the new tariffs will affect our economy? Or do you think it will have no
It will
effect?
definitely affect the numbers in terms of bringing it down. Like I told you, most of the things Nigeria exports into the US is oil and gas, and that traffic can be directed elsewhere. If it cannot go to the United States, it can go to other areas. The major setback would be in areas like tiny food products, like I said earlier, cashew nuts, animal feed. Those are the things that could suffer. But in terms of the major trade lines like oil and gas, that can be diverted elsewhere. Yes, jobs will be lost, obviously, because, of course, many Nigerians are depending on that trade. So livelihoods will be distorted. But as far as I'm concerned, what it means is that there are other opportunities. Nigeria should look into the continent. There is, as you know, the Africa Free Trade Agreement that has been activated. So there's a great possibility in exploring some of those inter-African trade relations and strengthening them at this time. Of course, what President Trump is doing is not only impacting on Nigeria, it's impacting even on Europe. And there is also a possibility there that Nigeria should also reciprocate, by increasing the tariffs, because as you know, the United States too is depending on Nigeria on a few things. But like I told you earlier, there is a power asymmetry here. Whether Nigeria will be able to do it as Europe is contemplating is another conversation altogether. But as far as I'm concerned, because Nigeria has something to give the United States as it has something to receive, if Trump is raising the tariff, I think Nigeria should go ahead and also raise their tariff so that we can also show and demonstrate that we're players in the global arena.
All right, we've got a trade deficit of $3.29 billion dollars with the US. What can the government do to mitigate the effect of these tariffs?
Yeah, the what is very clear right now is that with the increase in tariffs, the trade deficits will only widen because what it means is that the Nigerian products will be more expensive. Simply put, what does the tariffs do? When you impose a tariff on a particular product, the person who is exporting will make sure that the prices reflect the fact that there are new tariffs. That means you will increase prices, isn't it? And what it means is that if a particular product is, let's say, coming from Nigeria at $5, for instance, if you can source it from another country at $3, you are going to obviously buy from the country where, that will sell to you at $3. So the increase in tariffs definitely will deepen the trade deficit. And like I told you, what Nigeria can do to make sure that the trade deficit does not negatively impact on the economy is to explore other alternatives. Oil and gas, luckily, is an international commodity that can be sold elsewhere. China is there, ready to buy from us. And like I said, other forms of export into the United States, we can explore the possibility of strengthening our ties with African countries through the opportunity offered, from the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. There's a huge deficit indeed in inter-African trade. So rather than begin to agonize about increase in tariff by the United States, my sense and my submission is that Nigeria could begin to explore how we can leverage on opportunities offered by trade deficits within the continent, navigate more systematically to make sure that those deficits are filled up by making our products competitive within the continent rather than agonize, like I said earlier, about what Trump is doing and not doing in the United States.
All right. So, what's the likely impact on consumers, Nigerian consumers, and businesses? Do you think they will likely feel the pinch of higher costs and inflation?
Yes, yes, definitely. What it means is that if, for instance, Nigeria goes ahead to reciprocate by imposing higher tariffs on, let's say, vehicles coming from the United States. What it means is that Nigerian consumers should be getting ready for a rough ride in terms of paying more for maybe the American cars and several products that come from America. So yes, indeed, if there is a reciprocity on the Nigerian side, which is very likely, it means that consumers are the ones who are going to bear the brunt of such tariffs, especially on the Nigerian side. So yes, there's likely going to be inflation, uh, you know, especially on American-made products making their way into Nigeria.
Right. The tariffs are expected to produce hundreds of billions in annual revenue for the US. How do you think this will affect the global economy, particularly African countries that rely heavily on international trade?
Well, the resources that are generated into the United States, like Trump has insisted, it will be for Americans and the American people to decide what happens to it. My sense is that, as you also know, um, if it was earlier, one could begin to argue that there could be soft benefits in terms of scaling up aid. But as you know, there is a radical cut down on aid in terms of what the United States can do. So I cannot exactly say how a more prosperous United States can impact on an ordinary African and an ordinary Nigerian, especially now that the aid budget is being cut down or drying up under Donald Trump. So it is difficult to say how prosperity and more resources coming from increase in tariff will benefit people who are beyond the borders of the United States at the moment.
All right. I must say a very big thank you to you, Dr. Uche Iwe, for sharing your thoughts with us on Business Express this afternoon.
Thank you.